All right, welcome back to the Make or Break shop. This week we're gonna be doing some Star Wars stuff. You guys know I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I've got an R2-D2 head back here. There's a TIE Fighter helmet that's gonna be an upcoming video. And I thought it would be fun this week to try making a lightsaber, but I'm not totally sure how we're gonna make it yet. So you just talked about the 3D printer in the last video. Why don't we try 3D printing one? Yeah, I do have a 3D printer, so we could do it that way. Yeah, but you've got all this cool woodworking stuff. Why don't we try turning it on the lathe? Or we could try turning it on the lathe. I guess we could try that. Tell you what, actually, we're gonna try both of these ways, and we're gonna kind of compare and contrast the old with some of the new. So let's jump into it. So this video is all about dueling lightsabers, not dueling banjos or the Duel of the Fates. We're actually gonna start out with this wooden one that I turned down on this lathe right here. So to start this process off, we are using these offcuts of walnut that I have left over from some other projects. And so you can see that I am cutting that very first piece down to size, and then I'm mounting it up and throwing it onto the lathe. I am not a great wood turner by any means. This is actually a Harbor Freight lathe. It's really cheap, and I'm using some pretty cheap chisels that need to be sharpened all the time, and I don't have a great way to sharpen them. But the general process I think is right. So I meant to actually cut this piece a little bit skinnier, but I forgot about it until after I'd already started turning it on the lathe. So there's a ton of stock that I had to remove to get it down to a round piece. And then once I got it down to a round piece, I wanted to get it pretty close to the 3D model. And to do that, we actually got to jump into the computer real quick. We are going to be turning these on the lathe, but before we get to there, I still want the general shape. So I don't have one of these 3D printed yet, and I'm actually going to use the laser to cut out the profile. So something inside of Fusion that I just realized that you can do is you can make a sketch of the profile, and then you can actually export that sketch in a format that you can send to a laser cutter. And so you can see if I turn off, this is the projected sketch of the lightsaber. So if I turn it back on, you can kind of see how that is working. So what I am going to do now is going into that sketch and then exporting it as a DXF. And now we're going to import into Lightburn, and I'm going to just barely be able to cut it out. So let's send this over to the laser cutter. So once I'd gotten that file, I could throw it on to the laser cutter. And this is what I came back up with. And this was the template that I used throughout the process. You can see that I am putting this right on the top to measure out the different lines. And then I'm using various tools to cut it all the way down. Since my lathe is only 18 inches wide, I was not able to turn this entire piece all at once. So I had to drill out a mortise and then cut a tenon on the other piece. So once I got this turned down, then I just glued these two pieces together. And you can definitely tell there's a seam right there. I wasn't able to match the grain up. And I haven't put any finish on this at all, so that would actually make it a little bit nicer. Or if I'm really trying to make this like a for real prop, I would actually paint the thing, but it's walnut, and that would just kill me on the inside. Then to mimic this 3D printed part, I did my best to actually carve that out with a chisel. I didn't do the best. I could have taken my time a little bit longer, but I just wanted to get kind of an idea of what it would look like. So one thing that I'm not set up to do great was to actually make this hole on the inside. I did actually cut this out at the very beginning when it was on the lathe, but I couldn't send it in super far because my bit wasn't long, so I probably need to get a longer bit. And then I tried to do it on the drill press as well as just drilling it out with a hand drill, but I got off just a hair, so this actually doesn't go in straight, so you can see it's kind of cattywampus, but for just playing around, this works pretty well. And this is just a 3/4 inch wooden dowel I got from the big box store. All right, so let's talk about the 3D printed version of this guy. I've actually run into a couple issues while I've been just filming, is that this has dropped off the table several times. I just broke off of the pieces that were screwed together. So I'm just gonna have to glue this back on. That is one of the negatives, is that it is more fragile depending on how you model it, but you have complete control over how the thing is designed. So a lot of this is just to do with my designs, but everything started in Fusion 360. I actually modeled this up so I could print it in 4 pieces. That is so it would fit on this printer, and I did it with threads. Maybe I should have just done a circle mortise and tenon like I did on the woodworking version. Once I got everything printed out, I was able to screw it all together and then re-screw it all together and then glue it where it broke. I could strengthen all of this up into one part. I could do Bondo and all these gaps. So I actually am gonna finish this part because it looks pretty bad. So I'm in the middle of the process of painting it. I'm not doing a super great job. I'm just trying to get something on there. I sand it, then I have some sanding filler, and then I'm coming back with this aluminum, silver, chrome, spray paint, and then I'm gonna mask it off and add in some of the red as well as some of the black onto this guy. So this paint job is pretty bad, but you get the idea. So people can actually do pretty amazing stuff with 3D prints. I talked with Core Geek Creations, and he made this amazing helmet from the Wasp. You can check out the interview in the link down below, but people can do amazing stuff unlike what I did here. So which one is better? You can probably guess by now, it really depends. On the 3D printing side of things, since you're actually creating the 3D model or you're downloading the 3D model, you can make it super custom. There's just shapes that you can print out that it would be almost impossible to make out of wood, regardless of the tools that you have. You could CNC some shapes out that are 3D, but some of the cavities, especially on the insides, that you can do with 3D printing is really, really hard to do on the wood side of things. Also, if you're gonna be 3D printing, the material is gonna be lighter, and depending on what you're using, you can kind of vary the strength of that as well. And last but not least, it is really, really repeatable. It just takes a really, really long time. I'm actually printing out a second one right now, and this one took me about 7 hours, and I think this is gonna take about 17 hours to get the rest of these pieces done. All right, so on to the wood side of things. The wood just straight up is stronger, especially if you're doing PLA like this is, and you had this hollow shape. This thing was actually more fun to make. Turning this on the lathe is always a fun thing. And then really the drawbacks for this are the positives of this. Really hard to do some of the complex shapes if you do 3D printing, and unless you're using a CNC or you have a bunch of different jigs, it's gonna be really hard to make exact duplicates of the same thing. So really each has its own use. So I'd love to know from you guys which you would prefer, whether it is the hardwood walnut lightsaber or a 3D printed one that in this case is painted horribly. Speaking of 3D printing, I've been doing a lot more 3D printed projects, and I've been using this printer right here and actually did a full review of it if you want to check out right there. And there's going to be some more videos coming up where I actually combine woodworking and 3D printing to do stuff around the shop. So until next time, go make or break something in your shop. See you guys.